Rain hammered against the hospital windows the night I first met Lena Carter. I still remember the exact sound, sharp, cold, relentless, the kind of rain that made the entire city feel lonely. I was halfway through a 14-hour shift at St. Vincent Medical Center in Chicago, surviving on terrible coffee and adrenaline, when the emergency room doors slid open around 11:40 p.m. A woman stepped inside holding her ribs, like every breath hurt, and behind her walked her husband, tall, broad shoulders, expensive watch, perfect haircut, perfect smile, the kind of man people trusted immediately. "Evening, doctor," he said calmly. "My wife had a little accident. A little accident. I've been an ER physician for 12 years. You learn very quickly that bruises tell stories people are too afraid to say out loud, and Lena's body was screaming. Dark bruising around her upper arm, small cuts near her lip, fading yellow marks near her collarbone, finger-shaped bruises, not fresh, not old either. Repeated, carefully hidden, professionally hidden. I looked at her. She refused to meet my eyes. That was the first thing that bothered me, not the bruises, not the shaking hands, the silence, because victims who fall downstairs usually talk. Victims who are terrified usually don't. "What happened?" I asked softly. Lena swallowed. "I slipped in the kitchen." Her husband answered before she could continue. "She's clumsy sometimes." He laughed lightly after saying it, like it was adorable, like humiliation was affection. I forced a polite smile while my stomach tightened. "Mr. Carter," I said, reading the intake form, "I need to examine your wife alone for a few minutes." For the first time, his expression changed, only slightly, but I noticed men like him hate losing control of rooms. "It's fine," he said smoothly. "She gets anxious alone." "I'm sure," I replied calmly. "Hospital policy." A long pause, then he smiled again, too quickly, too perfectly. "Of course." The second he stepped outside the curtain, the room changed. Lena finally breathed. Not fully, but enough for me to notice. I sat beside her instead of standing. Sometimes people tell the truth faster when you stop towering over them. "Did your husband hurt you?" Her eyes instantly filled with tears, but she shook her head. "No." Too fast, too automatic, like she'd practiced that answer. I'd seen it hundreds of times before. Abuse teaches people survival before honesty. So I didn't push. Not yet. Instead, I examined her injuries carefully. 3 cracked ribs, severe bruising, old healing injuries along her back. 1 scar near her shoulder that looked months old. This wasn't new. This was ongoing. "How long has this been happening?" Silence. Then finally, "Please don't make this worse." That sentence broke my heart more than the bruises, because women who say that aren't protecting themselves anymore. They're protecting the man hurting them. I gave her pain medication and printed information for domestic violence resources. She hid the paper inside her purse, like it was contraband. Then her husband walked back in. Instantly her entire posture changed. Smaller, quieter, controlled. He wrapped his arm around her shoulders possessively, not lovingly, possessively, and before leaving, he looked directly at me and smiled. "Thanks for taking care of my wife." Something about the way he said wife chilled me. Like ownership, not partnership. After they left, I couldn't stop thinking about her. That bothered me too. Doctors are trained not to get emotionally involved. But something about Lena haunted me. Maybe it was the fear in her eyes, or maybe it was because she reminded me of my mother. My father never hit my mother, but he controlled her financially, emotionally, psychologically. I grew up watching a woman slowly disappear inside her own life, and I promised myself I would never ignore suffering when I recognized it. A week passed. Then exactly 8 days later, Lena returned. This time with a broken wrist, same husband, same perfect smile, different excuse. She fell getting out of the shower. Again he answered for her. Again she stayed silent. But this time I noticed something else. A bruise around her neck, faint, partially covered with makeup. My blood ran cold, because strangulation changes everything. Women who are strangled by abusive partners become dramatically more likely to be killed later. I knew that, and suddenly, I wasn't just worried, I was afraid for her. While setting her wrist, I leaned close enough so only she could hear me. "You are not safe." Her eyes flickered toward mine. Fear, recognition, then panic. "Please," she whispered. "Don't say anything." Her husband kept outside the room like a guard dog, watching, monitoring, waiting. And then something happened that I still think about to this day. As they were leaving, Lena accidentally dropped her prescription paper. Her husband didn't notice. I picked it up, and on the back, written so faintly I almost missed it, was an address, apartment 4C, West Hollow Apartments, and beneath it, "Help me." My heart nearly stopped. For a moment I just stood there staring at the paper. Then I ran outside, but they were already gone. That night I barely slept. Every scenario kept replaying in my head. What if I ignored this? What if she ended up dead? Doctors are supposed to report injuries, offer resources, follow procedures. But this felt different. This felt urgent. 3 days later, after my shift ended, I drove to West Hollow Apartments. The complex sat on the south side of the city, gray buildings, broken lights, old balconies rusting at the edges, the kind of place people stop noticing. I parked across the street and waited. Around 7:15 a.m., I saw him leave, black suit, coffee in hand, calm, normal, like he wasn't destroying someone's life behind closed doors. The second his car disappeared, I walked inside. Apartment 4C, I knocked once, no answer. Twice, still nothing, then softly, "Lena?" A long silence, then the locks clicked. When the door opened, my chest tightened instantly. She looked worse, much worse. Fresh bruising near her cheek, stiff lip, one eye slightly swollen, and terror. Pure terror. "What are you doing here?" she whispered. "I came because you asked for help." Her face collapsed emotionally, not crying, not relief, exhaustion. Like someone who'd spent years drowning, finally stopped pretending they could swim. Inside the apartment, things looked strangely perfect. Clean furniture, expensive decorations, beautiful kitchen, no signs of chaos. That's another thing people misunderstand about abuse. Violence doesn't always live in messy homes. Sometimes it lives behind designer curtains. Lena sat trembling on the couch, and finally, she told me everything. His name was Daniel Carter. Corporate attorney, respected, connected, charming in public, monster in private. The abuse started 2 years earlier. At first it was emotional. Criticism, control, isolation. Then came the screaming, then the shoving, then the hitting, then worse. And the real reason? Children, or more specifically, lack of them. For years Daniel blamed Lena for not getting pregnant. He called her defective, broken, worthless. He forced her through endless fertility treatments, painful procedures, hormones, doctors' tests, and every failure became another excuse to punish her. But then she discovered something horrifying. The infertility problem wasn't hers. It was his. Daniel secretly knew for over a year. A medical report confirmed he was infertile, completely. But instead of accepting it, he hid the truth because, in his mind, being infertile made him weak. And weak men with power often become dangerous. So he blamed her instead. Beat her instead, destroyed her instead. I sat there horrified. But why stay? The question escaped before I could stop it. Lena laughed weakly, not because it was funny, because abused women hear that question constantly. He controls everything, she whispered. My money, my phone, my car. My family stopped talking to me because he convinced them I was unstable. Classic isolation tactics. Abusers don't just trap bodies, they trap realities. Then Lena said something that made my stomach drop. He said if I ever tried leaving, nobody would believe me. And honestly, for a moment, Abby understood why she believed him. Men like Daniel survive because they build reputations stronger than their victims. That afternoon, I helped Lena secretly photograph every injury, every bruise, every scar, every medical record. Then I connected her with a domestic violence attorney named Rachel Monroe, former prosecutor. Cold eyes, sharp mind, exactly the kind of woman Daniel Carter wouldn't expect. Over the next 3 weeks, we built a case quietly, carefully, because leaving abusive men is the most dangerous moment in an abusive relationship. Statistics prove it. The control starts slipping, so violence escalates. And Daniel was already escalating. One night, Lena called me crying at 2:13 a.m. He knows something's wrong. I drove to her apartment immediately. When I arrived, hallway door was cracked open, and inside, everything was destroyed. Furniture overturned, glass shattered, blood on the kitchen floor. My heart nearly stopped. Lena? Then I heard her voice from the bathroom, weak, shaking. He tried to kill me. I found her locked inside, bruised, terrified, barely breathing properly. Daniel had strangled her after accusing her of cheating, then smashed her phone against the wall. But while he showered afterward, like nothing happened. She locked herself inside the bathroom and called me from an old hidden phone. I called 911 immediately, and for the first time, Daniel Carter looked scared, really scared. Not angry, not arrogant, scared, because police body cameras were recording, because bruises don't lie, because strangulation marks photograph very clearly, because control was finally slipping. He was arrested that night. And even then, he kept smiling. That part terrified me most. Men like him genuinely believe consequences are temporary. But Rachel Monroe was smarter. Over the next 2 months, she uncovered everything. Hidden fertility reports, threatening emails, bank surveillance, security footage, even recordings Lena secretly captured during arguments. And the worst part? Daniel had been seeing another woman while blaming Lena for infertility, a younger coworker. Pregnant. The entire courtroom went silent during the hearing when Rachel revealed it, because suddenly his entire image collapsed at once. The respected attorney, the successful husband, the polished gentleman, gone. Exposed. Just another coward hiding violence behind expensive suits. Lena cried during the trial. Not dramatic crying, not movie crying. Quiet crying, the kind that comes from years of emotional imprisonment. Finally breaking open. Daniel eventually accepted a plea deal. Felony domestic abuse, assault, witness, intimidation. His law license was suspended permanently, and the woman he cheated with? She left him before sentencing. Turns out abusive men eventually lose control of everyone, not just victims. A year later, Lena visited my hospital again, but this time she walked differently. Schuster's back. Eyes clear. No bruises, no fear. She brought me flowers and introduced me to someone standing beside her. A little girl, maybe 5 years old, dark curls, bright smile. Lena smiled softly. I'm fostering now. I stared at her. You always wanted children. She nodded. Turns out motherhood had nothing to do with him. And honestly, that might have been the most powerful thing I'd heard in years, because abusive people spend years convincing victims they are nothing. Broken, unlovable, mipable. But healing does something beautiful. It introduces people back to themselves. And sometimes, life waiting on the other side of survival becomes bigger than anything they lost.